Hi guys, AstroCass here, back with another astrology update. This one is going to be for my celebrity series, but it's going to be on somebody that has been in the news quite a lot at the moment. It's very sad and shocking news of their passing, but I thought this person has a super interesting chart, and I feel like it is really great to get to know the person. I know they were extremely famous, but I'm part of like a boy band, but I just thought it's so good to remember them as who they were as a person. And I think astrology can really help us understand people at a deeper level. So I just thought this would be a really great way to kind of honor them and help other people, understand how to look at a chart and how to see certain things, especially because this individual shared a lot about mental health, their struggles with fame, being really famous early on, being in a boy band, all those sorts of things. And because they are a celebrity, a lot of their relationships and maybe some of those mistakes have been quite public, so we can see a lot of the energy from their chart potentially be playing out in different areas there. So with all of that being said, thank you so much to all my new subscribers. Welcome to all of my returning subscribers. I appreciate you all. And for everybody watching today, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, interact. It really helps me grow my channel and reach a bigger audience and just share my insights and my information. As always, comment below, talk to me in the description box about what you see, what you know, and what aspects you notice, especially if you're an astrologer. I love all of that kind of feedback. I will let you guys know as well, I am a little bit sick, so if I do have a little bit of a cough or a funny voice, that's why I do apologize, but I really just wanted to talk with you guys and get this video out because this individual intuitively has been coming to me, and the energy and the imagery I'm getting of them is in like a beautiful white suit. They're showing white roses, a white dove of like peace. So I know that this person is safe and that they're okay. They're probably still transitioning because they only recently passed. So I'm sure they're still going in between being in the physical realm and being in spirit. And I'm sure they're still transitioning and going through their life review and doing all those sorts of things. So I want to let everyone know that I'm extremely mindful of that. And I know that this person deserves to have dignity and privacy. And I'm doing this from a place of love and just pure curiosity of their chart. And I really hope that this can just help people understand themselves a little bit better by using astrology. So with all that being said, I'm coming from a place of love and trying to shed some insight and share my knowledge and just what I know about astrology. So we are going to be talking about Liam Payne, One Direction star who recently passed away tragically. I don't want to talk about his passing, at least not yet. We might have a look at his trends a little bit later down the track, if that is beneficial and helpful for people. But I wanted to share my insights on who he is as a person and what I can see from his chart, and what's happening there, because what we see from celebrities isn't necessarily always their true self. Being a celebrity, they can amp up or they can kind of portray what they think people want to see from them. So I just wanted that to all be super, super clear. Now, I guess as always with astrology readings, I'm just going to jump to kind of what stands out to me and what I find interesting. But it's always really important with somebody's natal chart and an astrology reading to look at their rising sign and then the chart ruler of that rising sign, and also their sun and their moon. And then obviously aspects as well. All that stuff is really important. So I will try and analyze all of that in the chart and just let you know what stands out to me. And I only have very little information of Liam's actual private life and kind of what he was like. I can't say that I was a huge One Direction fan. I knew of their music, really enjoyed it. I knew of the band members. I knew of Harry Styles because of Taylor Swift. And so I was quite familiar with parts of the band and One Direction and who they were, but can't say I know a lot because, as I said, I wasn't a diehard fan or anything. Not that their music isn't great. I do like their songs and them. It's just for some reason, it was just something that I never really become like a diehard fan with. I didn't fall into that, but I know that there are so many huge fans of this boy band and they are fantastic. But when we're having a look at Liam's chart and him as an individual, what stands out to me is that he is a Scorpio rising. So this is fixed water. So this is visually fixed water is like ice. Or it's like a lake. And think about like the absolute depths and the darkest point of a lake that you can't even see. You don't know how big it is, like the absolute depths and the bottom and the darkness in those areas. So it is fixed water. Water links to our emotions. So these people are very emotional and very, very deep. Very, very deep emotions is Scorpio energy. Now, they might not always express those emotions and they might not always let you know how they're feeling. They might be quite secretive. They might be quite mysterious with that side of things, but they definitely do feel a lot of emotions. They are a very intuitive, sensitive person because they are a water rising sign. So that's the first thing that stood out to me about Liam is that there is a very sensitive side to him, a very intuitive side as well. Now, the other thing when we're talking about Scorpio risings, you can tell by the look of a Scorpio rising, they have a bit of a darker side to them. They are very alluring, very magnetic, very attractive. It's their eyes. Their eyes like are piercing and like can see through you. Very, very magical. And as I said, mystical, very mysterious. Okay. That's that Pluto energy. It's like they can be quite hidden and they can be just standing back and like observing, taking so much in. They're great detectives. They can be very, very hard to get to know because they don't trust a lot of people and they don't usually let a lot of people super close to them. So they can keep people a bit of a distance, and that's why they're so mysterious and so secretive. So that's a very interesting because I feel like that's probably a huge side to Liam. There was probably a big side to him that was very private, and very much like you just didn't really know the real him. He might have put on like a big front or shown people what they wanted to see, but I think maybe a lot of people didn't really know the real him because of that Scorpio side. Now that Scorpio energy as well, Scorpio is like Hades, the god of the underworld, right? It's very, very deep energy. So it's very transformative, very much phoenix rising from the ashes. It deals with those things to do with DEATH because Hades, god of the underworld. Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house energy. It can deal with that endings, rebirth. It deals with cycles, reproduction, sex, other people's money. It deals with like deep bonds. It can deal with people's secrets, the darker sides of things, the things that are more taboo and hidden. It can deal with like trauma and things that are very psychological. So generally, if someone has a Scorpio rising, they have seen a lot and been through a lot in their life. There have been incidences and events that have been quite traumatic for them. They've probably been exposed to and seen a lot of DEATH or just things that are very heavy, whether it's to do with like mental health, crimes, illegal things. They've just seen a lot of things that are very psychological and can be very traumatic. Now, that's either through them being exposed to things externally and physically involved, or sometimes it can be more internally and just those sorts of things are happening around them, but not to them, but they're still observing and seeing these things happen. So internally, like sometimes that trauma can be passed on to another person. So keep that all in mind because that's all that kind of Scorpio energy, right? And so some other celebrities that have this rising sign are like Lana Del Rey, Katy Perry, Scorpio risings. And so with all that being said about the Scorpio risings, there's a lot of energy going on there. Very magnetic, very powerful, very dominating. They can be a little bit paranoid. a little bit manipulative sometimes when they're at the lower vibrations, prone to using substances because of that trauma and that Scorpio type energy. But it's all about power and control. They can have a lot of issues through their life with power and control and that side of things. So they're not afraid to go to the depths of the underworld, if that makes sense. Like they are very strong. If you think about a scorpion and their armor, very, very strong, and they've got that poison. So if people do hurt them, sometimes they can be a bit vengeful and they can wait their time and strike when the right time is there. They can know so much about you because they're very secretive and very like observe a lot, very intuitive as well because they're a water sign, that if you cross them and you cross them really bad, because they are quite loyal, but when you do cross them and hurt them, they will wait and they'll be patient and they will strike at the perfect time, and they know exactly how to hurt you. The words or the topics that they can talk about can be really hurtful. So like that's that kind of Scorpio energy at the lower vibration. On the higher vibration, very transformative, very phoenix rising from the ashes, very strong people, very loyal, very magnetic and powerful. And none of those traits are bad traits, especially when used in the right way. So just keep that in mind. I'm just going to grab a drink. So the other thing that stands out about his rising sign is that he has Pluto in that first house. The first house links to your like a physical body, your appearance, your self-branding, but like your physical body. He has Pluto there. So he is a very strong, powerful person. Pluto amplifies all of that transformative Scorpio energy. Physical strength could be quite strong. He would have done really well in using that Virgo energy that he's got from his Sun and Mercury and his Pluto rising into sports or a way to move his body. So like martial arts, boxing, something like that, because Pluto in the first house so close to his ascendant and can give him a like really powerful body. So punches, movements can be very powerful and strong. So a good outlet is learning how to control and use that power in a good way through martial arts or some kind of like boxing or something like that. However, it is a very creative, like intuitive, emotional energy too. So even with that Virgo energy, I guess like writing and like writing songs is another great way to kind of use that energy as well, which I believe he did do those things, write his songs and his music. And I know he loved music. So that's a one avenue that he did use it. But again, sports, fitness, exercise for that Scorpio rising, his Virgo placements would have been really good for him as well. I don't know if he did that again. I don't know much about his personal life. I do believe he was quite into like some forms of exercise and fitness. So yeah, those things would have been really good for him. So with all that being said, that's kind of his rising sign and like Pluto there in the first house. Now, rulership wise, Pluto does rule Scorpio in modern astrology with like the modern planets. However, in traditional astrology, which is kind of what I use whole science traditional astrology. I'm a tropical astrologer, Western astrologer. Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. So when we look at his Mars, it's in the 12th house. And it is conjunct Jupiter and it's in Libra. So Libra energy is really much about, like it's all about peace, balance, harmony, cooperation, relationships, being with other people, right? Marriage, close one-on-one relationships. We have Jupiter conjunct his Mars. Now, Mars is all about your passion, your desires, what you're fighting for, fighting with. It's what motivates you, right? It's your energy. And it's conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter expands all of that. It grows it. Jupiter can be linked to also the Pisces and Jupiter houses in your chart because that's what they rule. Especially using traditional astrology, you're looking at Pisces and Sagittarius. So when we look at that for him as well, we kind of take that into account with this kind of story with that Jupiter-Mars conjunction, Mars being his chart ruler. What I do know is that Mars doesn't particularly like to be in Libra because it's opposite Aries. It does rule Aries as well in traditional astrology. So it's opposite the house that it feels comfortable in. So it's kind of weakened here. It's not at its strongest. It doesn't really enjoy being in Libra. Like Mars is a warrior, it's a fighter. And in Libra, it has to be a bit of a people pleaser. It has to cooperate with others. It has to put other people first, which is really difficult for Mars to do. So that's important to keep in mind because that's his chart ruler. That shows somebody that really, really can struggle with those sorts of things, those Libra traits. So that is probably a huge part of his story and his personality. Now, the fact that his chart ruler is actually in the 12th house, the 12th house is the most hidden house. Anything that's in the 12th house, any of those planets, is hidden from the native, like the person whose natal chart this is. So in this case, Liam's. They often can't see that side of themselves. They don't see those traits. They find it really hard to access that side of themselves unless it's through spirituality or substances, substance abuse and use, and addictions. So it can be really hard because the 12th house links to institutions, so like prison, mental health wards, spiritual retreats like yoga camps, hospitals. So it's like that isolation, that withdrawal, being in like institutions, being alone, kind of being locked away. It's also the house of transcendence. It's also the house of hidden enemies. So sorry. That house is a very difficult house because it's the last house in the zodiac sign. It's also hidden from the native. So often it's really hard for you to understand and use that planetary energy because of that. That is also adding extra layers of that Mars, his chart ruler, being very difficult for him to work with and to express and to use to its fullest potential. What that can look like, what this can play out like, obviously you've got to take into account all the other aspects and everything else, the degrees that Mars is at, but just visually, those small things that it's in Libra, it's conjunct Jupiter, it's in the 12th house, it's his chart ruler of his physical body, and his sixth house of that Aries sixth house of health and fitness and work and routine. This tells me a lot about him and his health and his habits, his daily routines. I feel like he self-sabotaged a lot throughout his life or during certain periods of time. I feel like mental health was a big thing for him because the 12th house can link to mental health. I feel like relationships in particular could have been a big source of depression or like a really big impact on his mental health. I feel like he could have also done things like his behaviors, because Mars is your action, it's how you're, motivated, what your desires are. Because it's in the 12th house, that's the house where they like to do things in secret, behind the scenes, they like to do things hidden. This can look like somebody, and it's Libra energy, that has new relationships quite a lot or intimacy with different people quite frequently, because Mars is also the phallus. It links to sex as well. It's your passion, your desire, your motivation. So sex. Now, I'm not saying that this is somebody that's going around sleeping around all the time or being intimate with just everybody. However, it can show that they might have a lot of secret affairs or a lot of secret relationships or private relationships or relationships behind the scenes. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm not saying that he was unfaithful to people or anything like that when he was in relationships, although definitely could have been. But I am saying that there could have been a high sex drive. There could have been a lot of hidden and private encounters throughout this person's life. And keeping in mind, he was famous at like 14, at quite a young age, 14, 16, like he was on the X Factor, very, very young. So I could only imagine what he was exposed to at such a young age. I do believe he would have been away from his family a lot. He's in a boy band, he's with other boys, he's getting all this like pressure and, getting exposed to so many things. He's in an adult world when he was just so young and maybe not fully developed enough to comprehend and understand and make the best choices. Not defending anyone's actions or anything like that. As I said, I don't really know his situation, but just saying that these people can be motivated by relationships and trying to find love, but that could be expressed in a really negative way. And being in the limelight and public image quite a lot, and people wanting to know everything about you, that can look like you having to try and be sneaky and doing things behind the scenes because you're trying to stay out of like the public view. You don't want people to kind of know what you're doing. So it can look like trying to, do things behind the scenes without people knowing and trying to keep that private and secret. Um, Again, that Scorpio energy of his physical body, potentially he could have been someone that might have really struggled with getting out of bed and doing things, or his energy levels, because the 12th house is the house of like rest, retreat, isolation, withdrawing. Mars is like your energy. So that tells me that he either needed to spend a lot of time alone in private or just in one-on-one situations with people. So like him and one other person, one-on-one conversations and situations. He might have needed that quite a lot in his life. To maintain his energy levels and his drive and to look after his health, he might have needed that. Otherwise, the flip side of that is maybe he was forced into situations where he could only ever be one-on-one with people, didn't really know who he could trust. Maybe his work schedule, that Aries sixth house energy, his actual physical work schedule, being a pop star, being a bit of like an icon, really forced him to have to be one-on-one with people and having to be private. So it can go either of those ways, but in some situations, like, when you're touring and stuff like that, you can't see your family, you can't really see, your friends back home in the UK and stuff. Like, he might have been, quite busy recording, traveling, doing stuff for work. So maybe that meant that he had to have a very secluded, private, isolated life and relationship with people. So that could be how that energy played out, which could have been quite lonely for him. He might have felt very lonely in those situations and having to live that lifestyle from the age of 16 or 14, however young he was. Like, that could have been very isolating for him. And again, Jupiter there is expanding and growing all of that Martian, that Mars energy there in Libra. And I just wanted to go back to the fact that, again, Libra is about diplomacy. They're very charming, very socially charming. They're good in relationships, in marriage, in dealing with people, those kind of situations. But it is in the 12th house, so keep that in mind, because some of those things can get a bit messy. But generally, like, Libra's about cooperation, it's about peace, harmony, working together. It's about diplomacy, being very charming. It's, about people pleasing, right? And putting the other person first. So that's a huge part of his personality. And I really think he struggled with that throughout his life, is relationship with women. His relationships were a huge part of his personality and what was happening there. And it could have been a bit of an addiction there, relationships, that codependency on people. And those relationships could have also led to him doing, I guess, destructive behavior, self-sabotaging. Also, with Mars ruling his first house of his physical body and the sixth house of his health and work colleagues, that's all sixth house. And Mars rules those two houses, Scorpio and Aries. I would say that what that means is his co-workers, people he worked with, especially in the music industry, maybe when he was in his boy band One Direction, a lot of them could have been hidden enemies. A lot of people could have been working against him. And I feel like probably people don't really understand that because the 12th house is literally hidden enemies, like people that you don't even know that are working against you. 7th house is open enemies, people you know about that are your enemy. 12th house can be hidden enemies. So with Mars being there, there could be a lot of conflict and a lot of events happen that were out of his control through people being hidden enemies working against him and his career, especially like that. Not his legacy and overall career and reputation, but when it comes to his health and the daily work and duties that he was doing, being a pop star and a singer, and putting in his energy, and him being an entrepreneur, because it's Aries sixth house energy, there could have been a lot of people that he worked with, even people in his band, that could have been sabotaging him and being an enemy of his without him even knowing. And he is a Scorpio rising, so he was probably paranoid and knew about these things, but maybe didn't have the evidence or proof. No way to prove it. But Scorpio energies are very intuitive and they don't trust very easy. So I'm sure that he probably knew a little bit about what was going on when it comes to those hidden enemies. Now, I kind of have spoken about that a lot. One last thing I want to kind of mention is that Libra and that Mars, very attracted to very feminine females, very socially charming females, because again, Venus is kind of what you're attracted to and what you kind of love and find pleasure in, but Mars is what motivates you and turns you on, your desires. So he really liked women that looked like wife material, or women that looked like trophies, like good. They looked good with him. They looked good on him, with him. A bit of a trophy wife, a trophy girlfriend. He liked that energy. He liked having a partner. I feel like he would have been one of those people that always had to be with someone, have a relationship, or have a girlfriend. A little bit codependent in that area, I think. He probably also really struggled with being alone, really struggled to be by himself. And I feel like if you've watched a lot of his interviews, he talks about how when he was really young and in one direction, they'd often get left in hotel rooms, locked in hotel rooms with nothing but like a minibar, and they'd be going on so many tours, and they'd be, recording music and writing music. So quite often they couldn't see their family, their friends. They only had each other and like minibars and alcohol. And he did explain in interviews, from what I've seen, that led to a lot of his alcohol use, or substance use and abuse. Now, I could only imagine that might have had a huge impact on him, especially being so young and him not being fully developed, and not having the right maybe coping mechanisms and skills to kind of work through that. And I'm sure that would have impacted his mental health quite a lot. Obviously, the other band members probably went through something similar, but I'm sure due to their personal lives, their family, their situations, that they may have navigated and handled it a little bit differently. For him personally, this was, the way he expressed it in interviews, was like that was really hard and difficult for him. And so I could only imagine that when he did pass, and potentially the situation that happened, and being left in a hotel room, potentially by himself. Again, this is all my intuition, no facts, no 100% evidence. This is just what I've read, what I've heard, my intuition, thoughts. I could only imagine that being left in a hotel room would have been extremely scary for him, because the 12th house also shows your unconscious fears and things that you could be really afraid of and have a lot of struggles with in life. For example, Marilyn Monroe, she had a Cancer 12th house. She really wanted to be a mother, and she really struggled with it. It's also something that impacted her mental health like so much. And it was almost her self-undoing, trying to become a mother. She had miscarriages. She really struggled there. Liam, he has Libra there, relationships, marriage, females, that happily ever after. That was his self-undoing, being left alone. Those things could have been huge triggers for him. So definitely he's probably not the type of person that would ever like to sleep alone, be left alone. I feel like he always kind of needed a person, someone very close to him, whether that was a really close friend or a partner. More so, I'm pretty sure it's relationships, like a girlfriend. Always kind of needed someone there with him. Otherwise, if he didn't have that trusting person, someone that he relied on, then that's probably when the mental health and things got really, really bad, and challenging for him. Now, I know that's a long-winded explanation, but I kind of wanted to jump into that. Also, I did mention to start off with that you have to bring in Sagittarius and, the Pisces energy, because Jupiter is conjunct that Mars, and Jupiter makes him more joyful, benefic. It also is kind of tying into that expansion and growth there. Jupiter actually will Sagittarius, which is his second house of money, finances, resources, and what he values. So there is a sense of him really valuing relationships and women, and having a pretty female there, the trophy wife, trophy girlfriend, that kind of thing. Because it's Sagittarius, second house, there's also that side of like freedom, maybe like different cultures, different women from different cultures, relationships with women from other countries and cultures. Also, Sagittarius energy is very free and freedom seeking. Now, I know Jupiter's not actually in the sign of Sagittarius, but some of that energy does get carried on because Jupiter does tend to rule those houses and has some of those things associated to it. So keep that in mind. And then with the Pisces energy, that's his fifth house. The fifth house links to creativity, children, like mental health. It rules that 12th house where it is, where that Jupiter is. So that's very interesting there, that connection. So that actually shows a lot of his hobbies, because the fifth house can be your hobbies and your pleasures, what you enjoyed, what you find fun, could have been addictions. And Pisces is, well, Jupiter is actually in that 12th house, again, emphasizing that addiction side of things, that isolation, that Pisces energy. Now, I say that because Pisces is all about like being in reality and being out of reality, 1 foot in reality, 1 foot out. Fantasy, reality. Pisces is the dream realm. It's sleeping, it's spirituality, creativity. It is being out of reality. And quite often when people are trying to escape things, or they're using methods because they're just escapism, they're escaping their reality, they will use substances. They can abuse substances to leave reality, to alter their state. The best thing you can kind of do, the higher vibration, is to link in with spirituality and find your life purpose and transcend through that way and cope with and heal those sides of things, and those things that might be challenging for you, and heal the things that are causing you to turn to substances and addiction, because obviously that can kind of keep you alive. It heals you. It can overall make you a lot more happier, and to cope better. When we try and escape reality and we use substances and abuse them, it kind of is just a band-aid on that situation, and you kind of get stuck in that cycle, especially when you've got that Scorpio rising involved. Like, this can be a bit of a vicious cycle and can be really challenging for a person. So a lot of his hobbies were trying to escape reality. A lot of the things that he probably used and found pleasure in were to escape reality. So whether that's sex, women, substances, food, like any of that addictive stuff, kind of all shows up there. So that kind of all gets dragged into that house there as well, because of the second house, fifth house, Pisces energy. That's kind of what I see there, and what stood out to me a lot. What I'll do now is kind of move on to his sun. Now, he has a Virgo sun. It is in the 11th house, and it is exactly conjunct Mercury. It's in a cazimi. A cazimi is when a planet moves through the heart of the sun. So Mercury, in this case, Mercury cazimi with the sun. They're both at 6 degrees. Very close to his midheaven, his Virgo midheaven, the highest point of his chart. The midheaven's at 3 degrees. So there's only a 3-degree difference. That's a very tight conjunction between his Mercury and the sun being on top of that midheaven there. This shows, so your midheaven is like the highest point of your chart. It's what the public see from you. It's what you're known for. It's like your legacy, your reputation. It links to the 10th house of like career, that sort of thing, right? Your career, your reputation, your legacy. It is in the 11th house. So the 11th house is your audience. If you're famous or you've got social media, 11th house is your audience. It's also your wishes, your biggest wishes and hopes. It also is your friendships and the groups you're a part of. So this tells me that friendships and the groups that he's a part of were a big part of his reputation, his career and legacy. He was in a boy band. That's perfect, and makes a lot of sense. Now, when we're talking about the sun is your ego, your identity, your life force, your vitality. It's how you shine and what people notice about you. This literally tells me he shines through his friends. When he's with his group, when he's in a group, when he's with his friends, he's shining. People are noticing him. When he is being of service to his following, to his audience, because Virgo energy is being of service to others, he can shine so bright. He can be a beacon of light for people. Virgo energy is very healing. It's all about purity. It's the virgin, purity. Now, when he is teaching and being of service and using that Mercury, his Mercury here is in rulership. Mercury is your mind, your communication, your thoughts. He was probably fantastic with communicating and writing and those sorts of things. That Mercury has a really nice sextile to his moon. It also has a beautiful rulership where it is able to express itself and be its highest vibration because it's in rulership. It's in the kingdom, in the house that it owns. So it's very strong here. This tells me that he was amazing with his friendships and his audience. He really was one of those people that actually probably really loved his fans and probably wanted to give so much to them and be of service to them. Also, he probably took a lot for them. Like, they were probably the reason that he pushed through so much because he loved his fans and his audience so much. He probably pushed through a lot of the issues that he had with being famous and a lot of the trauma that he had to try and give back to them. So I found that really interesting. And obviously that sun links to his Leo 10th house. So again, Leo is the performer, the artist, the creator. Look at me. They love attention. They love performing. They love to be seen. Now, I find that so interesting. And I kind of love that he has the sun, a very public, creative, self-expressive planet on his midheaven. It kind of tells me that he was kind of, you could kind of tell in this chart that he was going to be famous. Like the sun on the midheaven's a beautiful aspect to have. So I'm definitely not surprised that he was in a boy band, a bit of a pop star. Now, going back to the Virgo energy, again, as I said, it's being of service. It is an earth sign and it's ruled by Mercury. It's more of a feminine energy. It's very practical, very reliable, very grounded, down to earth, very humble, can be a little bit shy, very much a perfectionist. They're very, very hard on themselves. They can be hard on others, but they are even harder on themselves. They are nitpicking on themselves and trying to be so perfect. And that is probably why a lot of the time from Virgos or people with strong Virgo placements, you see them nitpicking, you see them criticizing and analyzing things. They pay attention to all of the small details, but they can be great writers. They can be really great with routines, getting people organized. They're great with like being of service and that sort of thing. And it is in the 11th house of friendships and groups. So I do feel like he had so much to teach people about being famous and about music. He probably didn't get a chance to fully explore that more, but he would have been a fantastic teacher and mentor, I think, for young people coming into that kind of area. He had a lot of work to do with his own trauma, but if he had have fully healed all of that and stepped into being of service and being a bit of a mentor to his audience or to up and coming like young famous people or musicians, I think he would have done fantastic. That's kind of what I see with that energy. Again, there is a trine from his 6th-degree moon in Aquarius. Sorry, not a trine. My God. I'm just looking at this and I see that green aspect and I was like, it's a trine. I was like, no, it's actually not. But nonetheless, there is still some beautiful energy there with that Virgo energy. And I'm sorry about that mistake with the trine to the moon. You'll have to forgive me for that. But the sun and the Mercury still are on the midheaven and the Mercury and sun are conjunct each other. So that is beautiful energy there in itself, regardless. Now, with the moon, his moon is in Aquarius, as I just mentioned, and it's in the 4th house. The moon loves to be in the 4th house because traditionally Cancer rules the 4th house, and the moon loves to be there in that 4th house. So it's very comfortable here. It is in Aquarius, though. So Aquarius energy is a little bit more rebellious, a little bit different, a little bit quirky. It can be very detached. It can be bigger picture type energy. It can be a person that really needs a lot of change and a lot of freedom and a lot of space. if that makes sense. So the moon is your emotional needs and your security. So with the moon being in the fourth house, that tells me that a lot of his emotional support and security comes from his home and family. Again, that's really great. There's a lot of support, a lot of nurturing in his home and family. But because it's in Aquarius, there was something that was not traditional about the way he was brought up or how his childhood was. There was a lot of disruptions, disturbances, a lot of chaos, potentially a lot of moving around, a lot of changing, because it's traditionally ruled by Uranus, like shocks, changes, sudden, surprising events. There's just something that's not traditional about that family situation. Now, whether that's just because he was famous young, moved around a lot, was away from his family a little bit, but there's something that's very detached and very different about his family and the way he was brought up. I feel like there could have been a lot that happened in that family situation that kind of caused them to be like a family, but like not really that close in some aspects. But then there's also that moon in that fourth house that does say that there was supports and nurturing there. So very interesting. I don't know too much about his childhood, so definitely keen for you guys to leave some comments below and tell me a bit more about that. His moon does have a sextile from Mars, a kind of a wide one, but it's still there. It's still a trine. So they're both air signs, both Libra and Aquarius. So that means that I guess his energy, who he was as a person, because it is the ruler of his chart ruler, his identity, his physical body, who he was, his energy, that sends a harmonious aspect to his moon. So there's a lot of like harmonious energy exchange between his Mars, like his motivation, his desires, and his home and family. So I feel like his home and family were quite supportive. I feel like him being in private, being at home with people that he truly knew and loved was really beneficial for him. It really helped with his emotional security and support. I think he needed a lot of private time. I feel like he needed a lot of alone time, not purely alone, because I do think there's a side of him that needed somebody in the house or someone with him. But this person might be someone that kind of sleeps a lot or just needs a lot of time to like rest and recover. They need to be away from like the limelight as such, which is very interesting because his sun is in a very like friendly, outgoing Aquarius 11th house type placement that is very public. But then there's a huge side of him because of the moon that wants to be private. The fourth house is very private. And then the 12th house is also very private, which is where that Mars is that sextiles the moon. So it's a very interesting with that kind of counteractive energy there of like needing to be in the public, needing to be with his friends, needing to be of service, but also needing to be at home and being in private, needing a bit of freedom and space. So that's something that I found very interesting for him. And I think you can kind of see the way he is in interviews and the way he spoke that, you know, there's that element there of him being, you know, quite private and thinking that people don't really know the real him and stuff like that. Definitely can see that through there. So that's kind of what I see. He's also got Saturn in the fourth house of home and family. Saturn's restrictions. It's karma to do with the father. Saturn's like responsibility, like hard work, limitations, boundaries. I do think maybe his family environment or his home environment was very strict, very regulated, very limited, a lot of boundaries there, a lot of responsibilities there. Saturn is in rulership using traditional astrology. In Aquarius, it is the traditional ruler. So that Saturn again is very strong here. But that Saturn is in opposition with his like with his Chiron, and Chiron's like your wounds about the public, your wounds about being famous. So there's a lot there to do with the home and family, father karma, male karma to do with his father and the males, and that public image, the wounds of being kind of famous, that Leo energy. So that was interesting. There's also a square from Pluto to that Saturn. So Pluto can be physical abuse because it's in the first house of body. It's Pluto, so it's a little bit challenging. Some kind of abuse there between him and males or him and an authority figure at home or in his home environment. Some kind of potential abuse or like power control issues there with male figures or authority figures in his home environment or his family environment. Again, not speculating, I don't know anything about his past. That can even just look like, being famous and having a manager or having someone there in your home environment, like, you need to do this, you need to do that. You're like very limited and restricted. It can just be that. I don't know. So that energy is there because it's a square from Pluto to Saturn, very challenging squares of tension and conflicts there. I also noticed that he has Venus. Venus is the planet of like love, romance, money. It's in Leo, in his 10th house. So he really loved performing. He loved being on stage. He loved singing. He loved that. And Venus is what like you kind of value and what you love. So there was a lot there. Again, Venus kind of tells you a little bit about your love life and dating. He might have, dated really beautiful women, kind of famous women. Again, trophy wife women that were famous and celebrities that kind of look good, look like a trophy, look like a prize. But Venus in Leo is very romantic and kind of idealize women and relationships. Yeah, very sweet, very romantic, very caring and loving. Shower them with gifts, buy them lots of things. So I think he was a very generous person, especially to the public, to his fans, to, I guess, women, to relationships. He probably would have been very, very generous with his money and wealth, if that makes sense. That Venus isn't very well aspected. It's got an opposition to his moon. So there's some issues with females. The moon rules, it shows your mother. It also rules your emotions and security. And then Venus is also showing women, like Venus is literally women, relationships. So two feminine planets that literally show your mother and like your wife or your relationship at war, tug of war, opposition. I really feel like maybe he had high expectations for relationships. He really wanted his happy ever after, but maybe relationships and love and situations around money just didn't live up to his expectations, or maybe money got in the way of finding true love. There's just something to do with like when his emotional needs are being met, and that security of like the home and the family environment, when that's being met, he doesn't feel that love. He doesn't feel like he can be in relationships, or he doesn't feel like valued, if that makes sense, which is really weird. But because it's an opposition, that's that kind of energy. Or when he's in a relationship, when he does feel like loved, especially with his career, when he's making lots of money in his career, he doesn't feel emotionally secure. He doesn't feel like his emotional needs are being met. This is my cat. This is Spirits. So I find that, yeah, really interesting that he had that tug of war between his emotions and, love and things that he found pleasure in, because, yeah, Venus shows what you find pleasurable, what you enjoy, what you're attracting. He attracted a lot of celebrities, a lot of people to him, a lot of fame with that Venus in Leo and in the 10th house. A lot of famous women, a lot of famous celebrities drawn to him. I mean, it does sound like he did date quite a few like famous wealthy people. Also Mars conjunct Jupiter, that can be sex issues with a mentor or mentors. I do know that the mother of his child was a fair bit older than him and was on the X Factor, a bit of a mentor or someone that he worked with. So I found that a little bit interesting. So yeah, that's kind of his Venus. And then I think we've kind of spoke about everything else. I mean, there is Uranus and Neptune in the 3rd house. They're conjunct each other at 18 degrees in Capricorn. That's somebody that, with a Capricorn 3rd house, somebody that is very cautious and very practical with how they think and what they talk about. They might be focused on their career quite a lot. They think about their career. They talk about their career and reputation a lot. That can be, because it's Uranus and Neptune, this can also show somebody that might have a little bit of issues with mental health, again, because of Neptune's energy, bringing some kind of fog and confusion around the way you think and communicate. And Uranus is there as well, which can bring a lot of chaos and sudden changes there. However, when used correctly, that could be like a big guru or somebody that's really great at writing and communicating in very unique, very creative ways. higher vibe, lower vibe. So it can either be like really chaotic and confusing, or it can be like genius, creative projects and writing and music. So either way, it does have a square. So Jupiter in the 12th house in Libra does square Uranus and Neptune in the conjunction down there. So Jupiter and the self-sabotaging behaviors, his beliefs about himself and relationships definitely cause tension and conflict with how he thinks and his thoughts and writing and communication there. However, Pluto does sextile that like Pluto and Scorpio in his first house does send a sextile. Sextile to support and opportunity. So there is some support through his physical body, through who he is, through his self-branding, through his identity, through his trauma and struggles. He was able to kind of write and create some beautiful music, or he was able to kind of articulate and communicate the trauma that he'd kind of been through in a good way through, I guess, art that can kind of heal people. So I found that that's kind of interesting and beautiful. But yeah, overall, like a very interesting chart. There's a lot more that I could say about it. Obviously, I didn't really know him personally. That's kind of the things that stood out to me based on like some of the planets and aspects there. A very private, kind of mysterious person, but also very humble and grounded. There was a side to him that was very serious, I feel like, because he has that Capricorn third house, and then also those Virgo placements, the Sun and Mercury in Virgo. This can be somebody that's a little bit shy sometimes and somebody that's quite humble and serious, that Capricorn and Virgo energy. So I feel like he could have had a really serious side. I feel like he might have struggled to like just genuinely have fun and be playful. Like if he could have tapped into that Venus energy a little bit more, that would have been, like really amazing. But obviously, there was some trauma and some struggles that he had, and there's a side to him that's very serious, a side to him that was always worried about being perfect and trying to be perfect for other people. I feel like that side of him was, probably quite difficult for him trying to manage being famous and trying to be perfect. And that might have led to him in some ways being quite serious. And then obviously other aspects have led to maybe some substance abuse and use there throughout his life. So that's kind of what I've seen in his chart. A lot of it was very interesting, but let me know what you kind of think about what I said and what resonates and what you know about him and, what you kind of see from his chart. And until the next one, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.